During our 35th wedding anniversary trip to Italy, we spent a day in Vatican City. Vatican City is a city state within the confines of the city of Rome. So it constitutes its own country. It's one of the smallest in the world. Um, the main site inside Vatican City is St. Peter's Square. St. Peter's Square was designed by Raphael and is this huge square that sits in front of St. Peter's Basilica, where the crowds gather for many of the Holy Day celebrations. And it's just a very interesting place to visit and to see. The columns on the two wings that come out give a very, like it's wrapping around you feel. And then the statues that are on top of all these columns are saints, and the saints look down upon the devout within the St. Peter's Square. So it's really a very interesting place to visit and to feel the energy of the Christian faith in this place. This is actually the border between Italy and Vatican City, that line of balustrades there. And as I said, it's its own country and it has its own security. The Swiss Guard are members of the Pope's security that take care of the Pope and the cardinals within Vatican City. And then Vatican City has its own government, of course, with police and so forth. This building is the Sistine Chapel, which you can see from St. Peter's Square, just the very top of the roof. And then, of course, here are the statues of the saints that I mentioned earlier, that go all the way around both the wings and St. Peter's Basilica. This second window on the top floor of the building, on the right-hand side of St. Peter's Basilica, you can see it here around the square. That is the window that the Pope gives his weekly blessing from and addresses the crowds from. On our tour of Vatican City, we got to go to the roof of St. Peter's Basilica and climb the dome. This is the terrace at the base of the dome looking inside to St. Peter's Basilica. And there was fabulous artwork to be seen from this terrace. All these paintings on the wall are not paintings, they're actually mosaics. They're made up of thousands and thousands and thousands of tiles, and they're just unimaginable how good they still look after all these years. These are the steps to go to the dome climb. It is a very strenuous 500 and some steps. They get narrower and narrower, and sometimes they're corkscrews. At one point, you're actually leaning on your side because of the curvature of the dome. At one point you have to hold on to a rope to go up. These shots are from the roof prior to the dome climb, where you see those statues that you see from St. Peter's Square. You can see them from the roof. Once you start climbing up to the dome, though, after you go through all the very small, further narrowing down steps, you get these magnificent views of Rome and the city and of St. Peter's. That arrow points to the Pope's apartment. Pope Francis decided not to live in the papal palace, and he lives in a apartment right there on the grounds, but not in the palace. He uses the palace, of course, for visiting dignitaries and so forth, but he actually said he didn't need all that room. And of course you get a great view of St. Peter's Square from the top of the tower. After climbing the dome, we went into St. Peter's Basilica. St. Peter's Basilica is very, very large. It's the second largest cathedral in the world, and it's hard to describe. Every square inch has some sort of decoration or statue or painting or sculpture, or even the roof is gold filigree. The floor is amazing tiles. It's just amazing to see. There are statues and reliefs and mosaics and paintings all throughout the building. This is Michelangelo's The Pieta. This is probably the most famous of the Mary and Crucified Christ statues. And then this statue of St. Peter, who was the first pope, is considered sacred because the devout will touch his feet and receive a blessing. Also, inside the basilica is the tomb of Pope John Paul II. While there are several side chapels within St. Peter's Basilica, the middle of the basilica under the dome is this large altar piece here that is made out of mahogany. It is set up right behind the entrance to the papal crypt, which you see here. The only person who preaches from this altar is the Pope. So this is where he gives his sermons and his homilies and communion and so forth from this altar. There is one set of doors to St. Peter's that is sealed and only opened every 25 years on the Pope's Jubilee. And these doors are sacred. Anyone who passes through the doors when they are open receives absolution for their sins. There are also extensive papal gardens that surround St. Peter's. We saw just a very small part of it, but it was very, you could tell they were very well maintained and had a lot of sculpture and statuary within them. After leaving St. Peter's Basilica, we went to the Vatican Museums. The Vatican Museums have magnificent artwork in them, such as this double helix spiral staircase that in and of itself was a work of art. But the exhibit halls run for, I think, 4 miles, and have thousands upon thousands of artifacts and exhibits and pieces of art within them. So there's no way to see it in one visit. As you can see, the part of the area in the museum we visited held the Greco-Roman art, which of course is fitting, us being in the city of Rome itself. But they had a very, very large collection of statues and busts and so forth. One of their most impressive pieces, of course, was a relatively famous statue called Laocoon and His Sons, which you can see here. At the end of our tour, we have an opportunity to visit the Sistine Chapel. No photography is allowed in the Sistine Chapel, so this is a stock photo of the outside of the Sistine Chapel, and this is what you would see inside the Sistine Chapel. Well, what you think you're going to see. This is what you actually see, because they stuff a lot of people in there. This famous ceiling painted by Michelangelo is truly amazing to see, and it was worth going in there to see it. And the last thing you want to do before you leave Vatican City is send yourself a postcard from the Vatican Post Office with a Vatican stamp.